This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider. At this school in Norwich, some reception year pupils ran back to their classrooms, keen to get back to work and their friends after weeks in lockdown.
Bye-bye, darling.
Okay, sweetheart. There we go, see my blue, broken. Are there any other colours you think we should have in our rainbow?
Purple.
Pink.
The teaching's the same, but the setting's very different. Pupils are being kept 2 metres apart with their names written on post-it notes so they know where to sit. Desks are spaced out. Hand washing is now a regular part of lessons.
Washy, clean, scrub.
Schools are reopening to more pupils across England, not all of them, and of those that are, not all the pupils went. Our education editor Anna Davis has been speaking to parents and teachers, and Anna, the kids can go back to school, but how many actually are?
Yes, it's a good question because the opportunity is there now for parents to send their children back if they're in nursery reception year 1 or year 6, so the very beginning or the very end of primary school. But there's nothing to force them to send their children back. There's no fines if they don't go like there normally is. And schools aren't going to be held to account for absences like they normally are. So it's actually down to the parents to decide. And I think some polls have shown they're pretty much 50-50. They're expecting about 50% of pupils who are allowed to go back to actually turn up. That's not to say that they might all turn up tomorrow if they turned up today. So I think a lot of parents are seeing how things go. The ones that did open today have put in really strict safety measures. So possibly the parents who go today will spread the word if they're happy with what's happening, and other families might send their children tomorrow and the next day. So it's quite unknown at the moment.
Yeah, I wonder if a lot of parents do need some extra reassurance, because there's a lot of scientists saying that the country's not ready to come out of lockdown yet. And of course, your children are your most vulnerable members of your family. You don't want to put them at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Parents are torn. I think it's a really difficult question because some of them really want to go back to work and they need to go back to work, but they also don't want to put their children at risk, and they might be living with vulnerable people with health conditions. They're at a heightened risk, if they catch the virus. But equally, some people are arguing that the consequences of lockdown on some children, especially vulnerable and disadvantaged children, is outweighing the risks, and they should be sent back to school. Some children are in really overcrowded or unsafe accommodation, and they would be better off at school, some experts are saying. So it all comes down, I think it's coming down to personal decisions of individual circumstances of each family.
Yeah, I know that with my own son, quite apart from any coronavirus fears, he's 6 years old and he just wants to see his friends again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an important part of school. I mean, a lot of head teachers are saying school's not just a building where you have lessons, it's all about social interaction, and especially in the early years, which are the years that they're letting back in, years 1 and 2, it's about sort of forging friendships and also laying down the foundations for reading, that kind of thing, a love of learning, that they're trying to instill. And the year 6 groups, which are allowed back in, are at that crucial age when they're about to transfer to secondary school, and it would provide them with sort of an end to their primary school years, a chance to say goodbye to their friends and get them prepared to go into the big school in September. And some people are quite sad if they miss out on that. They think the consequence of that will be quite harmful for children if they don't go back.
And a lot of the classrooms a lot of the playgrounds as well actually look a lot different, don't they? There's a lot of social distancing measures going on.
Yes, the schools have taken big steps to try and make sure they're as safe as possible. Parents are lining up 2 meters apart to drop their children off. Some schools have got rid of uniforms, and school bags, scooters and bikes aren't allowed into the premises. And then they've put desks further apart, and children are sort of supposed to stay at their desk, and everything they need for that day's lesson is on their desk. A lot of them are being put into bubbles of maximum of 15 people, so they don't interact with another bubble in the school. These are all to keep them healthy, but I suppose some parents would argue that it's quite sad as well, and maybe that's a reason not to send them back if they are seeing teachers in face masks and not being able to interact with their friends, there's an argument that that might scare them. So it's a difficult balance, really.
One thing we should point out is that while we're all talking about schools reopening, the schools themselves haven't actually shut, have they?
No, most schools have been open since the lockdown for children of key worker parents and also vulnerable children. So they've all had the opportunity to go into school. Most of them haven't been having formal lessons. They've been having sort of childcare and games, but it's been a place where they can go. So yes, teachers have been working hard through the lockdown, and I think the talk of the schools being locked down and reopening is a bit misleading, because they have been doing a lot of work, and obviously they've been working on the online learning as well for all the children who have been at home during the lockdown.
And throughout all this, you've spoken to lots of teachers and some parents as well. What are the teachers themselves thinking about school pupils coming back to their classes and about how they've had to work through this pandemic?
I think some of the teachers are very excited about getting their children back in, especially teachers who work with disadvantaged children. I think they're really worried about some families, children who are stuck at home, and then the learning gap between them and their sort of wealthier peers is growing, and they're very concerned to try and stop that, and they want to get them back in. Teaching unions mainly are against it, and they don't think it's safe yet for children to go back. So of course some teachers don't want to and are staying at home. Some are working from home and not going back into the classroom. So pretty much like parents, I think, is sort of very different circumstances for each teacher.
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.